Hello friends and fellow bakers, how are you doing? It's Chef Tom from ChefInstructorTom.com. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for coming by. Today we're going to make tea cake, and you say to yourself, what is tea cake? Well, tea cake is usually something that is served at afternoon tea, usually in the English tradition. The weird thing is, in England, guess what? They don't serve these same tea cakes. This is more of an American tradition. This is a cake I learned when I was at the Ritz-Carlton here in Chicago. It's a very simple cake. It's one that you can have if you don't really want a layer cake, you don't want a lot of frosting, a lot of stuff on it. You're just going to put some powdered sugar on it. It's a nice, moist cake. It's delicious. Real simple though. And I think you're going to enjoy it. It's a really nice, simple creaming recipe. One thing, I thought I could make it a little bit better. I did find a recipe online that was good, but I thought it could use maybe a little flavor and a little technique boost. Now, I know it sounds cocky, but I think I can rise to the challenge to make it a little more professional. What do you say? It's a cake that's done in an 8x8 pan, and you can do it in about 25 to 30 minutes for the mixing. Another half an hour for the baking, and you're eating cake in 1 hour. A little powdered sugar on top, maybe some glaze to have with your tea, your coffee late in the afternoon. Now, Margie and I used to go to afternoon tea at the best hotels here in Chicago in the before times, if you know what I mean. I believe we will go again one day. But until then, we're going to make this cake at home. Let's get to the kitchen. So it's a simple cream cake, and we're going to start by preparing our cake pan. In this case, it's going to be an 8x8 cake pan. Generous pan spray. And then a piece of parchment to go in the bottom there. I cut it to just a little smaller than 8x8, 7.5 by 7.5. And now it's all set to go. We're also going to sift our dry ingredients. In this case, we're using all-purpose flour. We've got baking soda and baking powder. We've got table salt. We're going to sift those guys. I'd sift over some parchment paper just to make it easier. We sift it over the paper, and then we're going to put it right back in the bowl to make it easier to add to our cake batter once we make it. So we've got our mise en place. We have the sifted dry ingredients, the sugar, white sugar, eggs, sour cream, vanilla, butter, and just a little bit of grated nutmeg. I want to grate the nutmeg right into the flour. Just a little bit of nutmeg makes a big difference. And nutmeg is a very strong flavor, so don't overdo it on that. Just a little bit goes a long way. Now I'm using sour cream today, but you could use yogurt. I'm using really good cultured butter here from Vermont. I'm saying the good ingredients really do make a big difference. So we're all set with our mise en place. Let's get to mixing. Let's preheat the oven to 350. Now we're going to cream out our butter and sugar first. The main thing to remember when you're doing a creaming recipe is to keep the ingredients all at room temperature. They will cream so much better if it's at room temperature. I got my ingredients out about an hour ago, and they are now all room temperature, and they will cream very nicely together. So we're creaming out our butter and sugar, and you'll notice that a lot of recipes will often call for melted butter. Sure, it might be a little easier, but I think the creamed out ingredients will be an even smoother cake. Why is it that people call for melted butter? Hey, quick science tip. So melting butter is one way to get fat into your cake, and a lot of recipes do call for it. It's probably easier that way, but there is a cost. When you melt butter, you're separating the butter into its component parts, the fat, the milk solids, and the water. And that's not such a great thing. A couple things. First, you're not going to be able to emulsify as well. Your cake is not going to be quite as light. I find that if you're creaming a recipe and you use whole butter, the whole fat remains emulsified throughout the whole process. And I think you get a smoother, softer cake. The other thing is there's water that's released when you melt butter, and that water then can form gluten that you don't want to have formed until you want it formed. I know that seems kind of strange, but it's just a very small amount of gluten, but the lighter we can keep our cake, the better. Now, back to the kitchen. Let's take a second and scrape down the sides. Sure, it's a little extra work to cream it out, but it's so worth it once you get done. Scrape down the sides often during mixing, and you'll get a nice, smooth, uniform batter. Add the eggs one at a time and scrape down between each egg. Notice the way the egg has completely disappeared. We're ready for our second egg. We can add the vanilla here as well. Let's scrape down one more time before we add the dry and the wet ingredients. Interestingly enough, the wet and fatty ingredients could be almost the same today. We're using sour cream, which is not the same as using buttermilk or a milk product, but it will serve the purpose of both fat and liquid. We can add about half of our dry ingredients and about half of our sour cream. Then we'll start creaming it out. Just mix for a few seconds and then add the remaining ingredients. Just mix it until it's smooth, and then we'll finish it with the spatula. Finish mixing the batter by hand a little bit. You'll be able to get that last little bit in there. Get the batter off of the paddle. The bottom line is you don't want to overmix it. Make sure all the dry ingredients are incorporated. I think it's looking pretty good. It really smells good now too. With a metal spatula, spread it to the corners. Now we're ready to go in the oven. Set a timer for 30 minutes and you'll be eating cake in no time at all. Well, it's been about 15 minutes. Let's have a look at the cake. It's risen nicely, but it's still not anywhere near there. Keep going, keep baking. Looks done, but we should check it with a cake tester first. I like to put the cake tester in at an angle, and that way you get the maximum look at it. It comes out clean, and we are done. Now, some bakers like to brush the cake with some melted butter. I'm not a fan of the butter, but if you wanted to brush it with some butter before you put the powdered sugar on, you could definitely do that. Some people will put the powdered sugar on inside the cake pan. I do like to take it out. I don't like to cut the cake in the pan, only because it kind of scratches up my pan. I'm using a offset spatula here. Don't use a knife, because again, that's going to scratch up your pan as well. You're going to want to very carefully, gently take this cake out. It should come out all in one nice piece. You can leave the paper on for the moment. And then we're going to dust it with some powdered sugar. I'd like to do it on the rack so we get just the cake. And be generous with the powdered sugar. Cover the whole cake. If you want to just do one piece at a time, you could definitely do that too. Well, let's cut a piece and eat. Now the cake is still kind of warm, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this in thirds. Make little squares here. If you want bigger pieces, be my guest. I want smaller pieces. I'm going to turn it around this way. Cut the squares this way. I like the end piece. Oh, this is so soft. Just crumbly. That is so good. I can taste that just a little bit of nutmeg. The powdered sugar, very simple topping. Well, that's my favorite snack cake, and I hope you enjoyed our tea cake, snack cake kind of thing. Can you change it up a little bit? Sure. I used to make a cake at the restaurant, a Bourbon rosemary cake, and it was delicious. This cake would lend itself perfectly to that. And again, it's got that moisture, the extra little flavoring you can get in there. You can put a little nutmeg in there if you wanted to. It's a perfect cake for those flavors. Could you add cocoa to make it chocolate flavored? Absolutely, and I just did that recently for my nephew's birthday. So use the same cake for a number of different things. And I recommend having kind of a standard cake you use for all the things. But the idea is to have those techniques available to you. Think what you'd like to flavor the cake with. What's your best idea? It's really a versatile cake. Have fun with it. And you can wrap what you don't use in plastic. Keep it airtight, and it'll last for a few days, even at room temperature right on your countertop. But if you're going to keep it a little bit longer, you might want to wrap it in plastic and put it in the freezer. You could put it in a Ziploc bag if you wanted to kind of nip at it over the weeks. It'll last a few weeks in the freezer, but I got to tell you, that small, nice cake is good for a small family or even a couple like my wife and I, and it is delicious any time of the day. Then if I just want a piece, I grab it from the freezer and defrost in the microwave. Yeah, that's the thing. You can do that. I do it like for 1 minute, defrost, and it just takes the chill off, and it is delicious. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions. Keep subscribing and liking our videos. I hope you enjoy them, and I will see you next week. Thanks for watching. Happy baking.